Hey, okay. So something has been bothering me. A few days back, Mark Hamill mentioned, it was actually May 23rd, and Mark Hamill made a post about Bonnie and Clyde. He was stating a fact about them, and people went nuts, thinking that it was some political thing, and no, it was. But here's the problem with Bonnie and Clyde. They have been completely romanticized. And so people have this warped idea about them. They were criminals, they were killers. Unfortunately, because there's been. Why would you make a Broadway show about murderers? Why? Don't don't fill my comments with, well, but have you seen the Broadway show? I don't have to. They were murderers. You know, if you're singing show tunes about two people, I have no doubt that they were in love, but they were killers. And the movie that was released by them, released about them, just completely was the beginning of how they were completely romanticized. You guys don't actually look at a history book, you depend on Netflix and Hollywood and Broadway. And what I find interesting is the fact that when History Channel did that special, I think it was History Channel, did that special on them, there was major outrage because of all the inaccuracies and everything else. I think that was back in 2016, and it was just like the internet exploded over, well, this was wrong, that was wrong, her physical appearance wasn't like this, you know, her hair color was wrong, she didn't wear this, she didn't, well, you weren't there to see what she wore. And it just, the fact that people want to make excuses for them. They murdered people. It doesn't matter if these people were cops. It doesn't matter, actually, because these were people. And you have to detach from 2019 mentality and go back to the 30s. Okay? They weren't going to go to jail. Just bottom line. They were going to continue on a warpath. So it was either they were going to go down in a blaze of glory, or they were going to kill everyone and escape. So the fact that they died, that was how they wanted to go. Because that's just how they were. They were not going to count for their actions. I mean, you think about it, Bonnie was like 19, 20 years old, And he was like, what, 21, 22 years old? And they were running around robbing and killing and doing all that kind of stuff. Do you think that they would really just give up all of that? And I see people flooding comments saying, well, that's the justice system for you. I'm pretty sure that the cops were saying, were wanting to bring them in, but didn't happen. They wanted Bonnie and Clyde alive, but Bonnie and Clyde were not having that. Oh my gosh. Okay, when this happened, it was like 1933, 1934. The whole gangster thing was still on a high. So, you gotta think about that too. So, I mean, Bonnie and Clyde were popular. They had their pictures in the. I mean, they were huge. They were celebrities. They were celebrities of their day. I mean, if I remember right, this was about the time when Al Capone's popularity was going down. I don't remember when he went into. Let's see. Okay, there's 1929. Yeah, because after the 1929 massacre, Capone's popularity started to go down, and I mean, he was going into the courts all the time, and then the tax evasion thing happened. But it doesn't say when. It's not giving. Anyway. Capone was sent to Atlanta Penitentiary May 1932. So, and they were. They killed 34. So, but their Bonnie and Clyde were big names by 33. So, I mean, you gotta think about that. Yeah, they're not going to let themselves become like Al Capone. I mean, he was big. He had become the big name in Chicago. Well, they were massively popular in Texas. There's no way that they're going to give themselves up. They weren't going to do that. And you got to think about how young they were. She was like 19, 20 years old. He was like 2 or 3 years older than she was. And, I mean, they. No. It's kind of annoying. Well, it is annoying to see people who are just immediately attacking the cops who I'm sure wanted them alive, but they had no choice. I mean, you've seen their arsenal when they had to bring them in, when they had to bring in the bodies, and they saw all and even when the two kids were alive, and they're showing off their gun collection and everything. Don't immediately decide that the cops just wanted them dead. No. No. Al Capone was out. Bonnie and Clyde were the new headline, and they knew it. but they weren't going to give themselves up. They weren't going to be a quitter like Al Capone was. You know, he could have run and everything, but I mean, they're young kids. You got to think of how young kids think, and especially in those days, they weren't surrounded by technology like we are now. This is what I mean. This is how they were. These two, anyway. And he had his gang, and from everything that I've read, his gang didn't like her. And really did not like her. I was watching a video. It was a movie made in the 70s, and one of the last members of the gang was still alive. And the interviewer, he had just been released from prison, and he was asked about Bonnie, and he wouldn't answer the questions. He tried to change the subject and everything, so that's very telling. If he won't even talk about Bonnie, but he was very open about everything else that they did, and but when it came to Bonnie, he wouldn't have anything. Wouldn't say a thing. So, can we please stop making excuses for these two young people who murdered? The fact that they made a Broadway show for two murderers is just sickening to me. They're not Romeo and Juliet. They should have made one for Romeo and Juliet, who did murder, but so. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of contradicting myself with that one, aren't I? But that's fiction. It doesn't really help the matter, but still. All I'm saying is, you know, the movie. I mean, there's documentaries and everything, but it's like you want to depend on the romanticized, Hollywoodized versions of their actual of who they are. They're murderers. And then I see where a lot of people are fixated on the idea that yeah, he was raped um in jail, where Clyde was raped in jail. Was that really confirmed? I mean, it's like now after, because it was never confirmed until 2016 when that History Channel movie came out and people were upset about it, but then it was like all of a sudden now it's confirmed. That seemed a little weird to me. I mean, if he was, I would like to see actual proof of it, and then I'll accept it. But a History Channel movie is not evidence, especially one that was so sickeningly inaccurate. I mean, I feel like they just use, and that part was very graphic, so I feel like they were using that for something. And it was just, why would you use a rape scene to be very graphic? It was just awful. I saw no reason to put that in there. Because even if he was, you don't fixate on that. um, you know, the movie, the 60s movie with Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty glamorizes and romanticizes them and puts them in this whole idea of, well, yeah, I'm sure they were in love and they loved each other. I'm not disputing that by any means. And I don't want you to get the wrong idea that I'm, you know, but these were killers. They were murderers. And it bugs me that people have this warped idea of, I mean, they're two young people who robbed and murdered, but you want to give them a pass. But I have seen other people, same age, who have murdered, and you're saying lock them up, throw away the key, they don't deserve to see the light of day. That's justice. And yet with these two, it's like, well, the cops should have just stepped back and just, what? This is Hollywood talking. This is the Broadway show talking. This is Netflix talking. This is what's, no. I'm sure that the cops wanted to bring them in. They wanted to question these two kids. They wanted to know, why are you like this? The cops had been tracking them down for some time. They didn't want to kill them. And but anyway, this has been bugging me for some time. So, especially when that Broadway show came in, and it's just like, these are murderers. Why are we glorifying this? These are two young people who murdered people, and we're basically saying that that's okay. Way to go, Broadway. You know, and this is coming from someone who, one of the big events in history that I research a lot is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And, I mean, you should see my movie collection. I mean, Boondock Saints and Public Enemies, Road to Perdition. So, and I research Bonnie and Clyde. But not that much. Because I'm just annoyed by all, because they are so plagued with the romanticized idea. Nobody actually wants to talk about them. They want to talk about the Netflix version or the the History Channel version or the Broadway version, or dust off the sugarcoating and come back to me. I mean, honestly, that's not who they were. You know? Anyway. And it was very telling when I watched that documentary from the 70s, and that one fella who was from their gang, still alive. He had been out of jail not for very long, but he was asked about Bonnie, and he wouldn't say anything. He kept changing the subject. He would talk about anything else. I mean, he would talk about robberies, and he talked about Clyde, and he talked about, you know, meeting Clyde, and he talked about all sorts of stuff. Bonnie, he clammed up. He just didn't want to talk about her. So that told me that the gang really, I mean, the stories about the gang not liking her, and then everybody's saying that that's just a myth. Not a myth. No, they didn't like her. So, anyway, like I said, this has been bothering me for some time, the idea that everyone wants to give Bonnie and Clyde a pass. Yeah, I'm sure they loved each other. It's obvious. I mean, she was 19, and he's a good-looking guy. Uh, but they're killers. They're robbers. And that shouldn't be given a pass. You know, I mean, they're interesting people. Why did they do this? I mean, that's a big question for me. What made them decide to go on such a rampage like this? I mean, usually when people meet like this, I mean, Clyde had a troubled past. He really did. But usually when you meet someone, you tend to change. He didn't change. I mean, it's almost like he sucked her into it, and it just, because she wasn't really all that bad. And I mean, the only thing was that she had been married in high school. Well, I guess she was kind of, because her husband, Roy Thornton, was their marriage was marked by his frequent absences and brushes with the law, but it doesn't say that she was a part of it. Thornton was still in prison. When he heard of their death, he commented, "I'm glad they went out as they did. It's much better than being caught." That was the mentality of criminals back then. You have to understand that. Um, of younger criminals. I mean, if Al Capone had been caught as a younger man, I mean, when he was caught, he was like 33. I mean, yeah, he was like in his 30s. But it was for tax evasion, you know? And, but I'm pretty sure, because he started out, he was in gangs and everything when he was younger and all that. And I'm sure that he would want to go down in a blaze of glory like that. So, and, but yeah, she, pretty much her life was, I mean, she was a waitress. Bonnie was a waitress. She was married to this guy who was a criminal, and but he was gone for most of it. It wasn't like he really. I'm sure she knew it, but it really doesn't say that she was a part of it. But that doesn't mean anything. She could have been. Um, Says that she kept a diary when she was 19. She wrote of her loneliness and her impatience with life in Dallas and her love of taking pictures. So, um, anyway, yeah, like I was saying, his his younger life was very, very troubled. And usually when someone meets another person, it tends to change. It was like he just, I mean, it's almost like she was trying to please him. And that's why she became a criminal herself. So, I don't know. To go from a waitress and someone who likes to take pictures to this is, so that's why there's the question of why, and I'm sure that's what the cops would want to know, and that's why you go down in blaze of glory, just like uh, Roy Thornton, her first husband, said, "I'm glad they went down like they did. It's much better than being caught." So to give, to bash the cops, like, well, this isn't justice. It's like, this is probably what they wanted. They didn't want to get caught. They were they weren't going to go. They were not going to sit in a court and end up in jail. And so they weren't going to account for their actions. That's basically what the bottom line is. So anyway, bottom line is, why are we romanticizing two young people who were killers. It's just mystifying to me. I don't get it. I really don't understand. I mean, like I said, I do understand that they love each other very much, but at the same time, they're killers. They robbed people. So it's just I it's just very frustrating to me that they're not actually seen for who they are. There's that sugarcoating over them that's this romanticized idea and this glamorized and everything else, and so you don't really see them for what they are. They're killers. And so it's kind of disturbing, really. So, but anyway, those are my thoughts.